Thanks for joining us. I'm Graham Knaus. I'm the CEO of the California State Association of Counties, and really excited to be here this morning and to do this work in partnership with the great Sonny McPeak over at the California Emerging Technology Fund, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. I really want to underscore what I think we all know, which is the importance of access to broadband. It's what brings us here, and really hitting affordability and ensuring that there is a robust both middle mile and last mile for every resident of the state of California. Connecting communities is so critically important in order to be able to tap into the modern economy and society. It is the gateway to economic opportunity in so many places throughout the state and beyond. And it's also an incredible opportunity to transform communities that have been plagued by poverty, where there are few educational opportunities and economic pathways. And we want to change that. I think we all want to change that together. At CSAC, we work on scores of issues across the policy spectrum, but there are two issues that drive us every single day: broadband and homelessness. And in both cases, we're at a very unique moment where we cannot lose the opportunity to change the course of history for so many communities. We must make change and push it forward now. We must empower communities, close the divide of opportunity for so many residents that are struggling and don't have access to the current economy. Our lens at CSAC is really through the county role as community leaders and as the primary service providers for the state when all else fails. And so we've been very fortunate to have a partnership with the California Emerging Technology Fund, and are thankful for the ACP Enrollment grant and that partnership with Sonny McPeak and team. It's really a perfect fit for us to address the millions of Californians that are both eligible for the Affordable Connectivity Program, but are not currently enrolled. CSAC and really all California counties will do everything we can to close that gap, to ensure that those who are eligible for affordable broadband service receive it, and to do so as quickly as possible. I want to just remark for a moment the importance of that ACP program. There's $14 billion federally that Congress has made available for this program. This is absolute gold in our hands to achieve what we've all been fighting for years, which is ensuring that communities have access to consistent and to affordable broadband. I'm a firm believer that windows of opportunity open and close all too quickly. And so when we see one, and we are there right now with this ACP program, we must take advantage of it, along with what is the largest ever state investment to put broadband infrastructure into communities. As we're thinking about this issue and the ACP program, we're also thinking more broadly around ways in which to engage with communities, with state leaders as well, to ensure that every single household in California is connected. And so we're thinking about other ways to have access, to open up access to the ACP program and to broadband. For example, through affordable housing projects and a linkage to ACP as affordable housing projects move forward, or through eligibility within health and human services programs, or every single possible way that we can ensure that there is awareness and enrollment around ACP, we need to pursue. I will reference that at the federal level, there is a reauthorization challenge, which is given the divisiveness in Congress currently, the current funding for ACP is likely to run out by early next year. And so there is a need to have a federal reauthorization by Congress in order to continue to keep it moving and really to increase the level of funding so it fits for California and for states all across the country. And so we are actively advocating and working within a coalition to try to make that happen at the federal level, and certainly appreciate any assistance around that. For us, this is really about education, economic and social opportunities, and really breaking both cycles of poverty, but also access to higher education and community college. And it is critical to have this broadband access available and in the hands of so many that are currently left out. That's why we are doing this work and are so relentlessly focused on having both the robust middle mile and a last mile and significantly expanding ACP and putting in place a more competitive broadband market to the benefit of all California residents. With that, what I'd like to do is introduce the great Sonny McPeak, who has been a force on this issue for a number of years and is a longtime partner of us at CSAC. In fact, when she was a Contra Costa County supervisor, she also served as our president of CSAC. She's been a great friend and partner on this, and we're fortunate to have her with us today. So let me hand it over to Sonny McPeak.
Thank you, Graham. What a wonderfully kind introduction that you just made. But I also want to just commend you on such an eloquent introduction to this webinar. For me, working with you and the California State Association of Counties is always like coming home. It is such an inspiring experience to be among county supervisors and county administrators so dedicated to serving the people of California. And, you know, every inch of this state, every part that is served by the state government is covered by one of the 58 counties. So there is nothing that the state alone does. It all involves counties. We are grateful for the partnership with CSAC at the California Emerging Technology Fund. And I'm joined here today to be a part of this webinar with our Chief Management Officer, Annie O, who is very, very familiar with county government, having been a chief of staff to a county supervisor, Supervisor Mitrofi in Contra Costa, and also working in Alameda County. So with that, I also want to say what a pleasure it is to work with your team at CSAC. I really thank Brian Rutledge for taking on and leading this whole effort to further our partnership. Chastity Benson was terrific in helping us get to this point. We've worked with, of course, Kayleen Dean and Brian Coate and Farah when we were just launching statewide the Get Connected California mobilization a year ago. In that mobilization with CSAC, more than 75 in-person ACP enrollment events have been convened in the last year. And so we've gained a lot of experience as to what it takes to increase the enrollment in the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is what this partnership with CSAC is focused on. I do want to underscore what you said, Graham, which is we, of course, need to get to deployment. There has to be access to the internet everywhere. It needs to be robust. It needs to be universal and ubiquitous. And in there lies also the message that there's opportunities for applicants to the California Advanced Services Fund federal funding account. The first round of applications are due on September 29th. And then there will be subsequent rounds. And then the state, of course, is now securing the $1.8 billion from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act Broadband Equity Access Deployment Program in order to also put additional dollars into deployment. So if we get the deployment done, now we can get everybody connected. And the good news is that California is really performing very well across the state. As we look at California in comparison to other states, California has the most residents enrolled in ACP. On Monday, we reached a new milestone of 2,362,810 households, which is 40% of all 5.8 million households eligible in California. The interesting dilemma is the more successful we are, the need for evolving our strategies, because we've now got to the people who are paying attention the most, have been the early adopters. We're now trying to reach 60% of the population, and counties are absolutely key to being able to get everyone online. If we were able to enroll the balance of those eligible for ACP, that would be almost $1.3 billion annually, additionally, in the California economy and circulating in the 58 counties. So this is a strategy for economic stimulus as well as getting everybody connected. The reason that counties are so essential is not only because the 296 supervisors know their communities better than anybody, but it is also because we in counties do the determination of eligibility for several of the major categories that qualify a household to enroll in the Affordable Connectivity Program. So, for example, if you're on Medi-Cal or CalFresh or the Women, Infant, and Children's Program, or some of the veterans benefits that our veteran service officers administer in counties, then you're automatically eligible for ACP. If you have benefits on tribal lands, you're also automatically eligible. And I know a number of counties engage regularly with their tribal governments, their tribal leaders as counterparts in their own communities. So that is really important that we now focus on how do we engage with counties in a cost-effective, strategic manner to notify those who are eligible through these major programs and figure out how to identify those already enrolled so we can focus on those yet to be enrolled. And just to share with you the power of direct notification, in this last year, the California Department of Healthcare Services actually included information about ACP in their annual newsletter to all 8 million plus households on Medi-Cal. And that generated more than 17,000 calls to our call center. And that we know is only about 20% of everybody who took action. So 80% plus of people who are told that they're eligible for ACP, they will enroll themselves. If you just give them the click-through button to the FCC website. So when we get 17,000 calls, that's a pretty good indicator of how powerful direct notification is. We know from what Riverside County has done in the last year that they are getting about 87% of the households to take action on their own. We are providing the support for the 13% who need some assistance, and they also are directed through our call center. And then community-based organizations immediately through the telephone will get them enrolled. If they need in-person assistance, then we are organizing those in-person ACP enrollment events. We had another experience with the State Department of Social Services, who notified the 2.5 million households that are on CalWORKs, and we got more than 10,000 calls through the call center. So this is why we're going to continue to work with you, Graham, and everybody at CSAC for direct engagement of county leaders to do what we call that direct notification for the most efficient use of our resources. We're very excited about the fact you're going to hear from Monterey County and the Monterey Economic Partnership today, from Hillary and Sarah Amir. Among those folks who did part of the 75 in-person enrollment events was Monterey County. And I can remember being engaged in conversation on a Friday night with Sarah over how we're going to make sure we had some computing devices in a drawing the next day in Monterey County. And I think she was at a Best Buy or another store trying to get those devices on a Friday evening. So the extraordinary commitment in Monterey is very, very important. And Monterey is also a partner with us in an FCC grant that we received to promote the Affordable Connectivity Program. The light just went off in my office because I wasn't moving. Now you can see me again. I'm going to conclude by saying we want to work very closely with you and counties throughout California on reauthorization. You identified that issue. NACO is going to be absolutely essential. It must be a bipartisan effort. The good news is California is actually the key to bipartisan reauthorization of the ACP program because Speaker McCarthy is from California, from Kern County. And Kern County is one of those counties that actually has one of the highest ACP enrollment events or enrollment rates. So we want to work with you and a lot of our rural counties in particular to support our entire California delegation, including Speaker McCarthy, in reauthorization. With that, I am going to turn this back to Brian. Or over to Brian, and thank you, Brian, for leading. And this is going to be an exciting presentation from the Monterey County leaders on what we all can do to accelerate enrollment in the Affordable Connectivity Program.
Thank you so much, President and CEO Sunny Wright McPeak. We really appreciate your partnership with us over here at CSAC. Thanks to Graham Knaus, the CEO of CSAC. I'm going to be your moderator today. We're going to move now from our high-level intro of what the stakes are and start to focus on Monterey as a deep dive. But I want to underscore a couple comments that CEO Knaus and CEO McPeak just made, or that will help us frame this case study of Monterey. So one is that this is gold in our hands. There's a big amount of federal funding that's already dedicated to this, and it's waiting for us to unlock it. And as President McPeak was just saying, this is not just immediate. We could potentially sign folks up now to an existing pot of money, but it potentially increases the longevity of the program, the higher we go as a state with enrollment. So that's powerful. This is not just immediate, but it's potentially longer term, whatever you can do at your county. Another thing I wanted to highlight is that as CEO McPeak just underscored, this has been an evolving and a learning curve situation with a new big program, trying to raise awareness, trying to boost enrollment. So you may have already been more familiar with the direct engagement approach of an event held somewhere for ACP that might be on your radar already. But what was just presented and what we're going to think about going forward, maybe bring into this conversation with Monterey, is that direct notification and other methods are proving that they might also be powerful ways for us to boost enrollment. And to, again, to CEO McPeak's point, the types of folks that we're trying to reach might change over time. So that method might matter if you've already enrolled a big, closer group in your county, but then now there's a harder to reach community. There might need to be some methodological shifts. So all that's floating in the air as we now shift to Monterey. Before I introduce our panelists, I'll just say a point on housekeeping. We really appreciate you being here today. This will be uploaded to our website and available for watching later. So I had some emails, and I know some colleagues probably couldn't attend but would like to view this. That's definitely going to be possible. Also, we have the Q&A turned off, but we would invite you to send questions to the panelists through the question function. It's just not available to be seen by other audience members to prevent crosstalk. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our case study here. And really what we're focused on is what's it like in one specific county? And then from your perspective outside of Monterey, your own county, that can potentially start raising some questions for you about, what are the enrollment rates currently where I am? What should I be doing? What questions can I be asking, and partnerships can I be building? So we're going to start with Monterey County itself and then move to their regional partners, the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. From Monterey County, we have two program leaders. They both have almost 3 decades of experience. They both are dedicated public servants, and they both have a track record of countywide leadership. So first is going to be Sarah House. She's the IT manager of systems and operations for Monterey. She has a master's in public administration, and she's been with the county for 27 years. Her previous roles have included the leader of information systems for the health department. She's coordinated facilities and technology needs for the county. She's managed franchises for cable operators in the county. So in her current role as IT manager, she's overseeing 2 programs that are particularly relevant for our ACP discussion: the Broadband program and the systems and operations side. So Sarah is someone well-versed in the county perspective on broadband. We're excited to have her. And so her colleague from Monterey, Hillary Thayer, is the library director for Monterey County Free Libraries. She has a master's in library and information science, and she's served many leadership roles in and beyond libraries. So she's the past president of the California Library Association, past chair of the Monterey Bay Area Cooperative, and congratulations to her. She recently received the 2023 California Library Association President's Award, which is exciting. In her current role as library director, so she has diverse responsibilities, but for this conversation, it's most relevant to know that the Monterey County Free Libraries group is part of the Schools, Hospitals, and Libraries Broadband Coalition. It's also part of several other associations. And they also do ACP enrollment workshops. They offer free wireless and other forms of technical assistance across the county. So Ms. Thayer is well connected to the library universe, and she's also directly involved in this ACP outreach game that we're all playing now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah and Hillary. And again, we appreciate you guys being here to share the Monterey story.
All righty, thank you. I wanted to express my gratitude to CSAC and to CETF to allow us to kind of share our experience. Let me go ahead and share my screen. For the County of Monterey, I think, how do we get involved in participating with this program? Well, we actually got involved in 2022 with the Get Connected events. And CETF is an agency that really does outreach to the agencies to then turn around and encourage us to outreach to the communities. And CETF had reached out, and we received notifications through CSAC. But there's also communications that are happening with our larger service agencies, such as health and social services. And the first thing we had to do was, since our major programs were not unfamiliar, but the County of Monterey actually needed to have a team that can champion this program. And so with that being said, is we call it the trifecta, right? We're always working on availability, affordability, and adoption. So we received support from our leaderships, especially our Board of Supervisors and our CIO, Eric Chatham, and then of course our director of the Monterey County Free Libraries, which you will hear from her. So with the leadership support and with the support of our directorship is that we were able to then take and start working on the strategies of how does an IT department, what do we do and how do we then do the outreach? And well, the first thing we did was take a look at our county community partners. And our county partners were already well-versed in reaching out to the community. And we needed to make sure that we kind of start to connect the program dots, right? And so the county agencies, such as the library, such as health, Department of Social Employment Services, outpatient clinics, even they offer to be able to, because we all share the same population of focus. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to leverage their relationships that they had with the community. And it's also leveraging where they're located, because we want to make sure that we are going out to the community. We don't want them to just come to us. It's really the most effective is being able to go out and outreach to the communities. And so with that is we first identified those partners within the county. Then we identified what are the resources, because we wanted to really leverage the Get Connected events, and it was statewide. And so they would have certain dates, and we thought that would also help us to promote. And so with that is the location. Well, the first thing we thought of was the libraries, because libraries, Monterey County Free Libraries is in every community within the county. They have many sites. And so, of course, Hillary was on board immediately. She's also a good fellow champion. And so she was like, what can I do? What do you need? And where do you want it? Right. And so how easy could it be? That allowed us to really hop on board to kind of have the first event. And it was in 2 locations. And so with that, leveraging where the sites, so we actually had site partners. We had program partners who were familiar with the community. We actually worked with VITA, and the VITA team actually are already working within our community. So that was great. And then the next we had to do was to identify the promotion partners. And so with that, we reached out to the hospitals, Department of Social Employment Services, Health Department, and then the County of Monterey. And remember, we're not trying to just utilize the county, but for the initial step was to have our county partners, who then we are, again, connecting the program dots, because the county partners actually have community partners. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to first leverage them to be able to then turn around and reach out to the community and the community agencies, which they have done successfully. And so promoting it, we had actual public information officers from each of the agencies willing to promote it on social media. We also reached out to our media and had news briefings. And this kind of gained traction because then the media were actually informed prior to the events. They were there during the events, and then they were able to kind of promote it even after the events. And so that's kind of the path we have taken. And again, I think what I heard earlier was evolving strategies. And the evolving strategies is how do we now increase our network of promotion? And so then the evolution of it is where we have successfully reached out to our education partners. So Hartnell College is one that we're very excited about this. They were excited. In their PIO, they agreed to hand out the brochures, agreed to reach out because school's starting. Our other partners for Department of Social Employment Services, they indicated that they were going to include this in their community outreach efforts. And so that was great. And of course, our Board of Supervisors, one of our districts, their chief of staff agreed that, yes, when we have these events, we're going to go ahead and promote the material. And so again, the events are great and they were very successful, and that piques interest and promotes the events. But then what we want to do is we also want to promote the program. And so promoting the program is that continued. We want to monitor the outcomes. and what can we do to continue to evolve and not have this be the peak, an event just be the peak, but to continue that promotion and adoption. And so that's kind of learning. And again, I would definitely seek guidance from CTF and Sunny, like as she stated earlier, she's a cheerleader for these programs. And if that's the case, we want to also be able to listen in on what are the other things that have worked, because we've used some of the tips that she's provided to us. WIC has agreed to provide the information as well and share it. And so that allows us to gain that traction that we need to see the numbers increase. So I'll hand it over to Hillary.
Okay, so what I want to talk about is selecting a site for an ACP enrollment event. And a lot of what we learned is very scalable, down and up, whether you're going to have a small event, a big event, a longer event, you're going to do basically office hours. And I want to start with the benefits to thinking about your public libraries that you already have as a location to do this. A public library location may already come with many of the things you need for a successful event. We in general have wireless internet, public computers, public space, flexible space, tables and chairs, a community room, that type of thing that you need to have a successful event. Public libraries are known public locations with restrooms and parking in general. And those are two big deals if you're going to have families coming. And those are two big deals: restrooms, parking, and where am I going? How do I get there? How do I find the entrance? You can think about and ask your public libraries, is it possible to have a separate entrance and use a separate room for these events? Many of them do have community rooms, some with completely separate entrances that you can use for these events. Public libraries, and I can't speak for every public library in California, but I can speak for everyone I've ever worked in and everyone I've ever talked to, that we are used to hosting events and programs that can cause a little bit of chaos. This is part of what we do. So you're not going to be in a location that is going to expect complete silence or to have nothing go wrong with your program. Part of making the event successful is really communicating with your library staff. Now, in this case, I was communicating with my own staff, but we had discussions for our first event, such as what phone number are we going to put on the flyer? Because the library staff can give directions, talk about parking, but they don't know ACP enrollment. So they're not going to have the answers to things like, what documents should I bring for this? Tell me about ACP necessarily. So communicating with the library staff up front, and then what are the rules for food, drink, noise, moving furniture around, plugging devices in? Make sure you're clear with the staff on all that. And who are you going to ask for needs in the space, such as if you need an extra outlet or if you need to make some copies? Who are you going to ask for that? And are you going to be sharing space with any other uses of the library at that point in time? So if there's going to be a children's program an hour into your event, how is that going to work? Or they can tell you the computers will get busy in the afternoon. It's going to get a little loud. Let them tell you kind of the pattern of the day that they are working with. This picture you're looking at here is from an enrollment event we held at our Greenfield library. We are in the Greenfield community room. We ended up with 5 tables like this set up in the room, and that is 2 enrollments going on simultaneously. The folks with their back to the wall are our enrollment specialists coming from our community partners, and then the enrollees are sitting in the chairs up front. So that is enrollment going on, 2 of them. So let's talk about the day of the event. And we have done 3 events across 2 different days. We learned from every single one. We keep evolving as we go. First, give yourself setup time. You can always use the extra setup time to put everybody, all your enrollment specialists on their devices and have them review, have them open the right tabs, whatever they want. People will bring their families. We held our events on Saturdays, and for childcare purposes, or both parents in the household want to know what's going on, they might need different IDs. The whole family is going to come. So have extra space, chairs, have a kids area if you can have it. Again, public library. We generally have these things for you. And plan for extra space. Have the ability to divert someone who you encounter another need. So our enrollment specialists, again, it's the two ladies in the white with their backs to the wall. Those are our enrollment specialists. And we were enrolling on iPads. And you can do a lot on an iPad, which is why we were using them. But if somebody sat down and we realized they did not have an email address, that's harder to do on an iPad. We had the ability to divert them to a library computer with a full-size keyboard, big screen, set up your email address, then we're going to send you back into the enrollment room. For things like printing out documentation, if they had not brought the documentation we had to take a picture of, we diverted them to a library computer and helped them print out their documentation, then back into the enrollment space. Be ready for some flexible needs. For example, at this event, we had a person come and she had just gone grocery shopping, and this was her stop, and then she was going home. She had her groceries in her trunk. She realized how long this might take. She said, I can't do it right now. I have my groceries in the trunk. Well, among the things a public library has, at least ours do, is a refrigerator. So we put her groceries in the refrigerator and she finished her enrollment. And that was all because of where we were, that we were able to offer that. I recommend having one floating troubleshooter just on the logistics of the event. We need more chairs. We need to move this table. We need an extension cord. We need some masking tape. We need markers for the whiteboard. Have a floating troubleshooter for that. Have a floating troubleshooter on the equipment. We were using iPads. I'm not an iPad person. I'm not an Apple person. I will do my best, but we had a floating troubleshooter on the equipment. It's the guy in black right there looking down, and he could just, it's like he waved at the iPad and made it do what it needed to do. And then have a floating troubleshooter who knows ACP really well, the ins and outs of ACP. This is important because we hit things like mismatching ID and name. And this floating troubleshooter was able to go, you have a middle initial in your name over here. You're not typing the middle initial over here. Let's try that. Or your cable bill that you're using for your internet, you're not on it. That's somebody else. Who is that? Can they enroll to ACP? So a floating troubleshooter just on ACP enrollment, because it's more than marching through screens. You really got to dissect some things. That's the guy on the right in the blue t-shirt. And you can see at this table, we have 2 enrollments and both troubleshooters helping out, which is why you need the space. You have to think about all the what ifs. What if the documentation doesn't match? What if you can't take a photo of the documentation? What if the bill is in somebody else's name? And kind of be ready for answers on that. Know the ins and outs of ACP. That's what your floating troubleshooter is for. For example, what's CalFresh versus SNAP? What's Medi-Cal versus Medicaid versus Medicare? What is Lifeline? How does it work? A lot of these things, if you have to solve them in the moment or look them up, will take time. If you got somebody who knows them really well, you can snap through those and help the enrollees. You want clarity on the next steps. So at our event, what we learned at our next event is we had not made handouts of all the phone numbers to the local ISPs. We had a national one that a lot of the local ones were not there and not all the national ones were there. We said, next event, we're looking up all the local ones. We're getting all the ACP enrollment phone numbers and we're making handouts. So clarity on the next steps and who's going to do the what ifs. What if they didn't work? What if we couldn't parse the address? What if they didn't have, we don't want to leave those people hanging. Are we referring them to CETF? I was referring, we have the service in California, Digital Navigators through Connected California. They're for free for California. They're ACP enrollment experts. So we had those handouts, we were handing them out. I will end with telling you one story. This was the day, it was a CETF event, a whole bunch of people across California doing these events. And because ACP is a federal website, they took it down for maintenance in the middle of our event. Yay, the whole website is down. That means we can do nothing. You can't do anything. We started looking at documentation, and finally we just started taking phone numbers and said, if we come back up, we'll call you. If we'll come back up, we call you. It came up about an hour and a half later, I think. The website came back up. I put somebody on the phone, and every single person came back. Every single person came back. It was that important to them. So everybody came back. I was surprised. I thought, that's it, we've lost them, but they all came back when we called them, when we said the website is back up. It is that important. Among the things we're thinking about here in Monterey County, in my smaller libraries where we cannot do a big event, we're thinking about, do we make this an office hours situation where we have a couple of people and you sign up for an appointment and we help you enroll, because our small libraries have all the same amenities, just at a smaller scale. And that's it. I think Sarah and I are ready for questions.
Thank you so much to Sarah and Hillary. Those were great presentations. So I want to start by just reframing what we just heard about. That was such a great illustration of how you could pull this off. You know, President McPeak mentioned that we've crossed over to 40%. We have 5.8 million households in California eligible. We just crossed over to almost 2.4 million. 40% are now enrolled. And what was so striking to me hearing that presentation from Hillary was the way that hundreds of thousands of folks in the last couple of months have been added over and over to reach 40% is through creative persistence. From if somebody has groceries in their trunk, someone putting it in a refrigerator to make it happen. So I just want to say that was a poetic illustration of how are we becoming so successful as a state. I want to start by just digging more in for Sarah and Hillary. You know, you mentioned that partnerships were key, and Hillary, you were talking about how the library doesn't have the ACP expertise, for example. Sarah, you had mentioned several different departments. Which departments have been taking the lead in Monterey, and how's that played out in terms of, you know, several people touch this world, but how did you guys sort through to get to these types of concrete actions?
So the Monterey County Information Technology Department has taken the lead for the program itself, but that doesn't really properly convey the value of the partnerships that we have with the department. So we are working on broadband projects expansion, but again, the adoption and there are other areas program related that really we needed to reach out to our health department, library, social services, and so we did take the lead. And we did have to champion that, but then we had to gain traction with our fellow departments. So I hope I answered that question correctly.
And I think just to build on what Sarah said, and a part of the reason to think about your library is a lot of our enrollment specialists were community health workers through a program we already had called VITA. And the library already had the relationship with VITA because they had been coming and using libraries as COVID testing sites. So I already had the relationship with VITA. They already knew where the libraries were because they'd been running around doing COVID testing for a year and a half. So saying, hey, we're going to go to the library, it was a no-brainer. We already knew each other. And they were very used to working with the public in really personal situations where you're asking for information and you're giving a really direct service. So we leveraged each other's expertise and connection.
Yeah, VITA is a very agile program team. It's what is the instance, what do we need to do, and how do we need to communicate it, right, for community engagement. So they use that same model over and over, and this was not different for them.
That's great. And that I think that probably resonates with some folks in other counties. So we had an IT leadership role. We had some, a champion, then we had buy-in and leveraging of existing parallel programs and staffing knowledge. These were transferable from other areas into specifically the ACP world, but it basically leveraged, clearly Hillary is a pro at this and could do these events in lots of settings. So we sort of leveraged that in the libraries into this world. Can you speak about, you mentioned that you got some, in order to get these events attended, folks get out and show up. You had partnered on the outreach side with departments, also the media, et cetera. What were the main barriers there and opportunities? Like, did specific communities or specific, whether it's departments or media partners, succeed very clearly in getting the most participants through their channel, whereas others struggled? Can you just speak about the unevenness I'm guessing was there in terms of that outreach push and getting folks attending?
So I'll begin with the answer, and Hillary can kind of add to it as well as she sees fit. But some of the barriers were that they were not used to work. They're very well versed in program, and so they're able to promote that. But it was different for a technology where we deal with technology. We deal with broadband expansion in the technology side, to then turn around and work with, it's a multidisciplinary team, and that hasn't been common in the past. And for all things broadband, now it is vital for a multidisciplinary team to be involved. And so those were the barriers. It was, if I were to reach out to a program, they were, thinking, wait, a technology person is reaching out. And what we want to do is be able to say and promote multidisciplinary participation and collaboration. And it's very helpful for CSAC to promote this as well, because they are disseminating the information to all the service agencies as well, so that it's not, the term ACP is not so uncommon, it's known.
And I think one of the things we knew our audience could be found. They're just going to be a found checking on their SNAP benefits or enrolling in other things. So the county also has the social services department. So we made sure they were aware. We said, can we put these flyers at your service points, your service counters? One of the things we did in the library that we did not do well, and I want us to do better, is we are also serving families. And we are free. So we are a free place to bring your children and such. So we don't know because we don't ask, but we have a large population of families who meet all these ACP thresholds. So we already make videos and put them on our YouTube channel for families. This is a skill. So I had us make a bilingual video about our events. And we had to write it and film it before we were really solid. So it's not the best video we've ever made. But again, on the list of continual improvement, always getting 1% better, is we're going to remake that video, make it in English, Spanish, and then find a translator to see if we can have text in Triqui or a dialogue in Triqui and Mixteco. And then can we make that a permanent fixture? And then when we have an event, we refresh it to the top of our YouTube playlist and simply add date, place, and time, and have it be a perennial, because those videos are already reaching out to families with young children. So leveraging your existing inroads into the audience you're trying to reach.
That's great. And now to just, we'll move to Amir in a second. My last question's about thinking big picture and longer term about, boosting enrollment even more. One way to think about what we just heard is a really, really good playbook for how to host in-person events to drive enrollment. And for a lot of counties out there that are watching now or will watch this later in our archive, they may not have participated in that yet. So the first step to a lot of folks, to various communities, is going to be, let's do in-person events. It's a great method, a great tactic. To very simplify what everything you guys just went through, step one, partnerships. Step two, outreach-driven events that are inclusive. Step three, evaluate and improve, and sort of keep going with in-person events. But could I ask you guys to think or speak to, having an enrollment specialist sit down with every single potential eligible person with an iPad is not necessarily how we go to 50, 60, 70% statewide enrollment. So I just wondered, what's the conversation like in terms of other potentially lower cost or lower effort level type, getting folks that can't necessarily show up and might be able to enroll themselves, for example, through outreach. Not sure where Monterey's at, but would love to hear your guys' thoughts.
So one of the things we do in the library, because I cannot train every library staff to be an enrollment specialist. I can't even train 90 people to be that level of enrollment specialist, is we do have in California, Connected California, and the digital navigators. They are completely free to all Californians right now, and they do this. So we partnered with them. We have handouts everywhere in all of our libraries. And among the things that the library staff could do is follow up to say, do you have a computer at home? Do you need help printing your documents? Get them started and then say, let's connect you with let's connect you with a digital navigator. And if you need to do that here on our wireless or our computers, we can set you up to do that. So we're not the enrollment specialists, but we have, if they need the technology, we have the technology. Sometimes we hand them the number and they go, you may not call this number, and we go, yeah, and they walk away, and that's all they needed. So that exists today. It's connectedca.org, bilingual and completely free to every Californian today. And this is part of what they do.
Yeah, that's great. And just because I'm trying to serve as the thinking out loud version of processing with the counties here. And we got one method, the in-person events, and I think that's the one people have heard the most about at this point. And then we also got potentially other methods, including you set folks up to attempt or follow through with enrollment entirely themselves if you give them some, tools right there on public sites. And then President McPeak mentioned there's also direct notification, and that's one that statewide we're likely seeing increasing success and importance going forward. So just want to sort of talk that through out loud with the counties as we go forward. I want to move now to the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. And then with questions for Amir, we'll also try to loop back with Sarah and Hillary and see how they all work together in the region. So Amir Othman is the Manager of Economic Development and Broadband for MBEP, the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. He has a master's in public policy and a track record of community-focused engagement that, from my interpretation, speaks to a clear passion for making California more equitable and sustainable. For example, he's worked as the policy director at a Stockton City Council district office, and he's volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. So in Amir's current role, he's helping drive ACP enrollment in several counties. The Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, which he'll go more in depth on, is a regional group, brings together cross-cutting entities across Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz County. So a great value of having him here is not just to speak to the Monterey situation, but the regional and cross-county potential compare and contrast type conversation here. So we really appreciate you being here, Amir. And with that, I'll hand it over to you to tell us about your work on ACP.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, CSAC and CETF for putting this together. I think it's a great value add, like County of Monterey had mentioned. Can I give you a bit of more background? Yeah, I wasn't an IT or an engineer or computer engineer or broadband person by trade. It's something that I developed with that lens and interest in providing expansive services when it comes to assisting disenfranchised and historically disenfranchised or low-income community areas. And what we've seen, obviously, with the pandemic and other efforts, that broadband and expansion and affordability and access is routinely growing to be a utility that's necessary for further economic development and can't just be discussed as an optional item or a privilege, but it needs to be expanded to all areas around the state and the country as a whole. So when it comes to MBEB, I have a few things I could share about our organization, the initiative itself, and then dive into some of our efforts when it comes to ACP. So who we are, MBEB is a regional member-supported nonprofit organization. We have members across various stakeholders, and we'll have more in-depth conversation from there. But our focus is pretty much on the Central Coast, which is the Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz counties. And we've been founded in 2015, so we're relatively new in the space, but our track record has been very extensive from then on to go into the different initiatives that we centralize most of our efforts upon. So within that, we have these three initiatives that make up what MBEB is focused on. And really, we just kind of like want to develop a more holistic approach when it comes to any operations, because none of the work that we do today or in our region is existing in silos or are separate items. They're truly interactive, and the best way we found to expand the great work that we do in the region's efforts across housing, broadband, economic development as a whole is to integrate them with one another and have the teams and staffs within the various offices from within MBEB and the region as a whole to kind of like encouraging that collaborative effort in mind to really prioritize equity, prioritize environment, and really put together inclusive economics for the future health of the region. When it comes to our broadband initiative, it was founded about a year after the organization. And here are some of just the main highlights of some of the efforts that we take on. I think it's important when it comes to some of the regions that are attending this call to kind of give them more background on the MBEB itself. We do a lot of work when it comes to the regional digital equity effort on the mission and play a crucial role when it comes to funding for cities and ISPs across the three counties. We provide assistance to service providers when it comes to connecting them to opportunities for funding programs, when it comes to GIS support, and when it comes to just overall broadband technical assistance. We also try to champion our member ISPs as well as champion any local agencies at our regional conversations because we want to put them front and center so that we can help them be able to provide the need to serve the locations that they are proposing, as well as ensure that their proposals are well in line with the values of inclusivity and open access and equity at the forefront of anything that we promote and put our name to. So that's really important when it comes to the expansive programs that are coming down the line when it comes to BEAD and digital equity planning grants, as well as just the current CAS programs that are there. We play a key role in a few other regional broadband planning efforts, and that was one of the ways MBEB actually got involved with this webinar itself. It was through our work with CETF and CPUC with the BEAD digital equity workshops back in June. The one in CSAC, MBEB was one of the regional partners that we were able to then bring on Monterey County and the other two counties to get involved in a more involved manner than they had as kind of like just promote that. And we want them to be very front and center to anything going on in the broadband space for them. So doing that effort is at the forefront of anything we do for MBEB is just having the counties all involved as well as not favoring one over the other, but essentially meeting them where they're at. And what we found is that really broadband, when we discuss it, when it comes to ACP, really just falls across three different prongs that we find when it comes to broadband access. So when it comes to ACP, obviously you're talking about developing public and private partnerships and models that we think that would be the best to leverage the ACP enrollment efforts that your entities can take on. When it comes to access, obviously that's the effort that we want to increase enrollment rates and adoption across the various eligible households. And we really just want to expand visibility for programs like ACP. And when it comes to awareness, it's about that local outreach and promotion that County of Monterey spoke on just earlier, as well as just about expanding and getting that out to any regional convenings, any sort of discussions, and let households and community members be aware of this great service, because I think there's still more that needs to be done when it comes to really showcasing how expansive the ACP program is when it comes to the eligibility process. So I know this was mentioned very briefly by Sunny, but yeah, we have about that 40% threshold when it comes to enrollment rates for the state among eligible households. All three counties currently still trail that California statewide average on rates of eligible households enrollment, but it isn't a unique issue. It's actually an issue according to the CETF's enrollment data that only 13 of the 58 counties have enrollment rates that are above the statewide average. And I think that kind of tells you, some of the issues when it comes to getting those expansive efforts and kind of like the importance of webinars like today are in providing creative and alternative solutions to help increase expansion. So just kind of show a case on the map. So we get funding as well through the CCBC, which is the regional consortium, and that arrow right there in the red, it kind of showcases that the three counties, and that's just a close-up of those three. So through MBEB and CCBC, we really leverage our projects across the broadband related spaces, even if they're not directly focused on ACP, to essentially be utilized to help expand those efforts if we are called upon. And I want to go into discussion kind of showcasing the varying levels of ACP enrollment efforts and rates across those three counties. So as you can see, while they relatively have generally the same amount of enrollment household percentages and the similar rates when it comes to eligible households, when you break that down into the total aggregated numbers, you can see that number just varies widely. So then when it comes to the annual unclaimed numbers, when it comes to the total number of eligible households, the enrolled households, that kind of showcases then a bit more of, that needs to be a deeper dive on what the capacities of those counties are to take on further events to, such as ACP. What we found with MBEB is that we've been trying to put together ACP enrollment events across the three counties, and the three counties vary greatly on their enrollment capacities. As it's great that we have the County of Monterey that could be a model, as demonstrated by them being kind of called upon today to present. They have that capacity, they have the expertise, they have the efforts to kind of like focus on enrollment. But the other two counties that we focus on didn't have either the funding or staffing or expertise on their end, and maybe the emphasis enough from leadership to kind of focus on this expanded effort. So I kind of put together a few ideas of how these challenges could be overcome, and it could be replicable for your counties as well as any entities watching today. So a little bit of an overview of what the Broadband Initiative and the type of entities we get involved with. And I think this will be really important when it comes to kind of talking about internal and external assessments when taking on, ACP enrollment efforts. So here are just the very different entities that MBEB takes on, such as service providers we interact with. We interact with partner consortia through our work with the CCBC, state partners, as well as the one of two JPAs in the state we are the executive director for, and that kind of focuses on South County in Monterey. We work with private businesses, county offices, nonprofits, state elected offices, just varying different entities. And I think that kind of is an important aspect that helps a lot when it comes to maybe limits when it comes to staffing capacity or, getting more insight on one of the current existing efforts and how to partner and leverage them. So I think this is really good to be a starting point for for counties to look into, and what we have used as MBEB when we were trying to expand our ACP enrollment efforts, because we didn't want to just stop at, hey, we don't have the time, we don't have the expertise, or we don't have the staffing available to do it. So, better luck next time kind of thing. It was more just, okay, we now identified our strengths and realistic efforts that we can take on. We identified where our limitations are. And then that kind of gives us an honest direction on where to go from there. As well as just that generally when you want to take in any project, goes without saying, developing where that purpose and goal comes from. That's obviously very important when it comes to, what efforts to take on and what to prioritize in the time being. And then also looking into existing awarded grants. I know with the state and the federal broadband programs, they're trying to be more inclusive when it comes to including economic development and workforce development. So there's always room, and I think will be a growing phenomenon that we'll see will be reflected when it comes to more integration across these different designations of what economic development grant is compared to a broadband grant, and how counties and cities are kind of combining those efforts to essentially for the greater benefit of the community. But after doing that internal assessment of kind of finding out where you stand when it comes to taking on an ACP enrollment effort, then that could lead to informing you on what to do next for the external assessments. So when kind of collecting community input and feedback, that's always very helpful when it comes to getting their involvement, getting insight on some of the existing efforts when it comes to the grant items and their various different program elements and application items. Leveraging existing partnerships that you have already had is one of the easiest ways to begin those work. With our work with CCBC, we have had existing efforts and communications with across the 3 counties. So getting them involved with, for example, the BEAD workshop was pretty standard, and I think was something that we could work on, that we were able to put together pretty quickly. And when it came to the ACP enrollment effort, it's through that previous existing relationship with the Monterey County that we were able to kind of like facilitate that process then and there. And then with the ACP enrollment efforts with the other 2 counties, I'll speak on that more in detail afterwards, but it's through those existing efforts that we were able to kind of like think of creative ways to still bring on those upcoming enrollment local efforts. And then just being able to, get an overview of the existing efforts that are there. You don't want to essentially kind of like overlap to the point that it's becoming a bit redundant, and that is kind of like a waste of the funds and a waste of resources that are being there. I think, being mindful of what there is out there to then be able to collaborate on or get insight or get, some lessons learned about how they put together their efforts is a very helpful tool. I know with MBED, we work really closely with other, through our work with CCBC, we work with the other 12 regional consortia, and like some of them have much greater capacity and are further along than we are. And we see that as a great resource. I'll talk about how the San Joaquin Valley Broadband Consortium, when it comes to ACP, they're next level and they're amazing when it comes to those efforts. And I was on a call just about the other day with them about like how they're doing so, and they helped kind of like, and I'll talk a bit more about that example when it comes to Cabrillo College. But I think seeing where those resources can be and getting that information is super helpful. And then just promoting the events, having that involved in any efforts that you take on when it comes to the local, posting them in like community anchor institutions. That's always a helpful resource when it comes to the city's sites, the city's communications or county's communications, or with the local community based organizations. Those are always great ways to get the word of mouth going on that end. So can I give you some input of like how we did the same thing as MBED about a bit back when we were trying to talk about how we can then put together the ACP enrollment efforts on our end internally. And our goal was really just kind of like, hey, we want to encourage regional collaborations and partnerships to leverage these complementary efforts. We saw that there's through our work with CCBC and SSBBA, we have gained like a lot of knowledge about what's out there right now when it comes to various different digital equity efforts, as well as ACP enrollment efforts. And we have developed that expertise and knowledge. And we also find out that we have a lot of partnerships that we can leverage, as we saw in this map, in this little chart that I put together. There's a lot of partnerships that we have existing, and there's ways that we can capitalize a bit more on it to kind of overcome the limitations. And those limitations, we said we have limited staffing and organizational funding to kind of like kickstart this to be as the end all be all. So we didn't have at the time the internal capacity to then just carry out our own day of the event enrollment efforts. So these assessments were critical, and some of the proactive engagement that led to some of the efforts that we worked on with the County of Monterey in Greenfield about earlier this spring. But having those discussions on our end internally as an entity was important to then kind of figure out where we are and then be able to then prioritize our efforts on leveraging what's out there. So I want to highlight an example that I think would be a very unique case in how we were being creative in involving ACP enrollment in, in a different way beyond just, hosting an ACP enrollment effort. And I think could be a way that the counties could find helpful in their existing efforts. So a little bit of background. So Cabrillo College is a community college in Aptos, which is kind of goes in between Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. And they received about $3 million of funding from the CMC grant program from the NTIA. And that program really just kind of focused on 3 different project activities, and I'll talk about it a bit more. But with our work with CCBC, we're kind of constantly looped in on what the funding awards have happened and the announcements. And as soon as we heard that Cabrillo College, a local community college, received this type of funding, we reached out to their staff and like, hey, we would love to highlight this update. We'd love to champion your efforts and spotlight this, and also assist in anything moving forward. So that communication, that participation from then on had Cabrillo College attend the call. And they were also able to learn more about what the consortium and MBEB's efforts are and moving forward with regional digital equity efforts, as well as some of the other stakeholders on the call that we have them share updates on their projects or items. Those are some of the ways that we kind of facilitate regional collaborations. And then from moving forward, we don't kind of leave it at just that. Going into the next CCBC meetings or beyond, we kind of just check back in always to like, hey, how's things going? Any updates you'd like to share? Anything we can help out with? And that diligence on our end is how we could make sure that that partnership and communication is constantly there for any further assistance. And that is what brought us to about what's going on today for us, which we're really excited about. So like I said, Cabrillo College has 3 different activities that they got funding for. And that's device distribution, digital literacy trainings, and high flex professional development. Now, the thing about Cabrillo College is that they have varying degrees of expertise and varying degrees of capacity when it comes to implementing those different activities. So obviously being administered by the NTIA, they reached out to their offices like, hey, we're having a bit of trouble. Who can we talk to about this to kind of like develop an approach on it? And one of the entities that the NTIA connected them to is MBEB and CCBC. And that's because of the communication and the partnership that we've had with Gladys, who's the federal program officer that we work really closely with. And she also put together a call that had us, Cabrillo College, and San Joaquin Broadband Consortium, and Fresno State all on the same call to kind of discuss next steps and how we can go from moving forward for Cabrillo College and provide them any assistance. But I came into it and I thought, you know what? They're doing an event where they're distributing devices for about 100 students across a certain period of time. So I think they're doing 3 or 2 events, and across them, they'll have 100 high school students coming into Cabrillo College, and they'll be getting free digital devices, as well as hotspots, as well as other services. And I told Cabrillo College, I was like, is that as far as they're going on the event? And they said, that's there. And I'm like, well, how about we kind of like share digital literacy literature? LFC, which is a community-based organization in the Central Coast, produces digital literacy literature and works very closely with many of the same communities and diverse areas that Cabrillo College works on. It's like, let me leverage that partnership that we have with MBEB to kind of develop that literature. So then you don't have as a capacity, that effort is already existing. It's about just like pinging them and getting them involved in this discussion. Thinking of creative ways of how we could showcase those resources. We thought about attaching QR codes that the students could then scan and that's attach their device that's shared to them at the day of the event on just moving forward. And that could be something we're developing with them. But those are easy efforts to kind of like get them connected. But the biggest thing that I want to highlight is how we got ACP enrollment involved in this event that's upcoming. And I was getting information about, hey, it's going to be an exciting event, the public, celebration for these students. And it's about, highlighting their work and kind of like putting them front and center about and sharing them with those devices. And I said, what about, is the invitations out also extended to their families? And they said, yeah. It's like, how about we get ACP enrollment at those events as well? And that's where we worked with San Joaquin Broadband Consortium through Fresno State Connect, who's received funding that has staff that have the expertise, have the capacity, and have the knowledge to then provide that service then and there. So then not only are these students coming in to get their free devices, but they're now also enrolling in ACP. Their families are also enrolling in ACP. So then that's kind of like where you are leveraging the efforts that are already in existence and also not taking on too much of capacity yourself as an entity that could either one, doesn't have the expertise or funding or the staffing. But that's one of the ways that I thought was a very exciting thing that we're currently developing and will be replicating across 3 counties to essentially overcome the San Benito and the Santa Cruz counties limitations when it comes to those items. As final thoughts, we mentioned on multiple occasions that internal and external assessments are essential when strategic planning for ACP enrollment efforts. We highly encourage to empower and prioritize partnerships with local CBOs, nonprofits, and community anchor institutions. They're in many ways for a lot of the disenfranchised and low-income communities, as well as communities of need when it comes to that would have high levels of eligibility for ACP. They utilize those entities very closely, and utilizing those organizations to reach those communities is probably one of the best and most effective ways to reach them and get them enrolled. With that being said, involving providers as well is one of the ways that your entity can take that on by doing day of event proceedings to make sure that the providers understand that they have the same goal as you do when it comes to ACP enrollment and facilitating that process, because as we know, it's a 2-step process. So one, determining that individual or household is eligible, and then from then on being able to apply that eligibility to get that discount. So it's a 2-step process, and by ensuring and to the best of our abilities to ensure those 2-step processes are completed on that same day could then best facilitate it from then. And then also we encourage entities to constantly attend and be involved in local and regional convenings when it comes to broadband digital equity. We also kind of focus on any enrollment efforts or any items that you take on from then on be complementary to existing efforts and be flexible and proactive. So working with where your entities are is helpful. So we saw that Monterey County has the capacity and is able to lead the efforts moving forward. So then we can then take that more of the backseat role of promoting, so provide any sort of assistance from then on. But then when it comes to San Benito and Santa Cruz, we kind of understanding that when it comes to their limitations, we can then be leading those efforts in a different way than we did with Monterey County. So about being that flexible way is essentially how to kind of manage those different types of needs, different types of capacities, and other considerations. That's it for me. I do have some items to kind of showcase. We could talk more about, but I can stop there and then we can open it up for questions.
Amir, thank you so much. That was really, really very valuable. We've done a previous webinar and so far talked with LA County, Riverside County, and now Monterey, but to actually get a regional perspective and from a partner's perspective, not an actual county that's worked on the ground with them, it's very, very helpful. Want to just highlight again, I love being the one that doesn't actually do the hard work of growing enrollment and just processes it with the counties for ideas. But what I heard was, again, the theme of partnership. I was thinking that if I was the state of California and I wrote a memoir about ACP, it would be called Connecting the Dots, my personal story to reaching 5.8 million eligible households. And the Connecting the Dots theme comes so well across with what you were talking about, Amir. The creative example of Cabrillo College. Can you speak, just so we have a sense of the 3-county area that you cover? It sounded like your efforts on ACP were actually specific to each county, or did you have efforts that were across all counties at once? Can you just give us that sense of what did you guys work on roles, responsibilities wise with each? Was it individualized or was it across all?
So we had, core themes that were across the counties when it comes to what type of entities we want to prioritize. That means we want to work with CBOs and local nonprofits across the 3 counties. So having, those principles in mind was as far as it went when it went cross county. But yeah, because we saw the varying degrees of capacities, the varying degrees of efforts and prioritization in ACP enrollment efforts and digital equity as a whole, that's kind of how I was talking about being flexible in integrating a different approach from then there. Because I think when it comes to ACP enrollment and anything when it comes to digital equity, it's a vastly growing space and it's constantly changing. And I think changing and adapting to best serve those needs, because our role here is to just bridge the digital divide and essentially expand access and affordability as far as possible in all points of the counties. So that's where we kind of had to just whatever role that we can fit and whatever assistance we could provide, because we saw where our strengths are. We did that internal assessment, like, hey, we have the expertise, we have knowledge, we have staffing that can provide guidance on this. We don't have funding when it comes to ACP related efforts as at that moment. And then also we don't have, for example, the capacity to then host a bunch of these events. I mean, I could do it myself, or I could have MBEP to host it, and we're hosting 1 or 2, and that kind of takes up so much of our time. But then is that truly leveraging the greatest capacity of what we could do, rather than kind of like being complementary to current efforts and empowering them?
And can I just ask you to also speak more, maybe if you could give some concrete examples of, you mentioned the different capacities and just different approaches from the 3 counties. Everyone out there on the call, I mean, they're from a county that has a unique situation, a unique capacity and focus on this right now. And we're all joined in the shared goal of moving forward from that baseline of existing capacity. But just so folks have a more concrete sense, I mean, how different were the capacities? I would guess, for example, that, we heard Hillary's example was very specific to, her expertise, the library institutions that existed and the health partnerships that were already flowing in the past pre-ACP. But can you just, give us, is there anything that sticks out in your mind as like, this county, this is where they were headed and it was so different?
So we saw how great that effort went in Monterey. And we always tried to make sure that any effort that we do in one county, we do something else in the other counties as well, and expand that effort as far and wide across the 3 counties. Given that, we essentially followed up with the county offices with both San Benito and Santa Cruz. For different reasons, we essentially were unable to then kind of launch a project. One of the counties, when it came to Santa Cruz, it's kind of like went down to the staffing's, prioritization of ACP. And that could be of varying degrees. We don't know internally what's going on, but it didn't seem like no matter constant efforts for us to get county attention and focus to essentially put on these events, and saying that we could partner and we have lessons learned, and we can also, call on Monterey County to essentially kind of give us some more guidance on how they did their events and stuff like that. But that didn't really work from there. When it came to San Benito, it was more about just the capacity was just not there. So then given those different, knocking on those doors and not really hearing so much back, and being able to not taking no for an answer, and all right, I guess that's it for ACP. We then moved on to reaching out to state and city government offices from then on, and leveraging those existing partnerships that for different MBEB members, hey, are you doing it there? And we've unfortunately were unsuccessful for a little while, because there's been some misconceptions when it comes to the broadband related efforts, when it comes to people thinking that deployment and infrastructure is the end all be all, and that's only part of the solution. You need to kind of have the adoption, you have the literacy, you have the equity aspects. So that kind of consumed our region. We saw over the past few months when it comes to ACP enrollment efforts kind of took a step back, and then we continued to kind of look into what's going on, and that's how we kind of got connected with Fresno State Connect, which received funding to then have an extensive staff and are going beyond just San Joaquin Valley. And we're developing that process essentially where our partnership with Fresno State Connect then moves forward to, hey, we can host these events without the counties. If the counties want to get involved and promote it, that's great. But now we're not like beholden to their limitations or their lack of emphasis or their lack of focus on ACP. And they can still serve those locations and needs there by now having that capacity that Fresno State Connect does. But we were only made aware of Fresno State Connect's work for example, because we're constantly just like looping in and just checking in. So attending these regional and local convening efforts, getting in touch with your local regional consortia, those are great ways to kind of like get that kind of like the mind going on, like what other ways can you kind of like overcome this issue?
Brian, I don't know if I can.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Could I just jump in
please
real
do.
quick? Another just shout out for your public libraries. We're already connected. I know your director in Hollister, your director in San Juan Bautista. We are already part of a whole regional network, and we do this together all the time. And it could be that in a particular county, what they can offer is space, and that's it. So the big issue for regional consortiums such as MBEP and across is how do we work across regional jurisdictional lines? If County A has the expertise, County B has the space, and County C has the equipment. And I think that's where consortia like MBEP and CSAC come in to say, can we match these up and move across county lines? And libraries, we talk to each other all the time. So again, if you're looking for partnerships, kind of reach back to your public library and say, hey, if we want to get this done, but it's over here, do you have any thoughts? And be like, I talk to her all the time. Let me pick up the phone. Let's see what we can do. I just wanted to jump in. I'm so sorry.
No, love that. As a non-library person, I'll underscore your comments by saying, I was looking at what the Monterey County Free Libraries, your organization, does, and I'm struck that you guys are posting on TikTok, you're offering free Wi-Fi, you're doing hotspots for folks that don't have access. Just there's so much activity in the broadband space that I think not everyone would necessarily think of when they think of a library. So it's worth just saying that partnering with libraries on broadband, it just makes sense given a lot of scenarios and a lot of history you guys have already built out. With those questions, we could keep going because this is very valuable, but I do want to close us with a call to action here as a representative from CSAC. So what we've heard today is that progress has been made already from two big factors. We have state leaders, CEO and President McPeak from CETF. They've helped get us to this 40% enrollment. We're almost at the 2.4 million of 5.8 million eligible households that are currently enrolled in California. That's a major milestone. But there's still so much clearly more that we could do. We have a 60% gap sitting there. So that's really why we need to keep thinking about this. And if you're at a county and you haven't thought about ACP yet, hopefully what you can do is you can think of what Sarah was talking about from the IT department's perspective, what Hillary's talking about as being from the library side and how many partners she had across different organizations. And then what Amir was talking about in terms of just thinking about creative ways to partner, whenever there's resources to do anything on ACP. And you can start asking questions about your own county. So that's really what CSAC wanted with these webinars, is to try to support CETF's broad statewide efforts by getting those messages out and getting folks motivated and interested, knowing that they can do this work themselves. In another context, the current president of CSAC and Riverside Supervisor Chuck Washington closed out the LA and Riverside discussion of ACP case studies by saying he effectively said that if you could summarize any details about how you could do this or why you could do this, what you should take away as a county leader, It's that the power is in your hands as county leaders. I'm no President Washington. I don't have a fraction of his insight or wisdom or, influence, but I thought it was a powerful and concise statement that the power is in our hands at the county level. There's a role to play. And these are good examples to start brainstorming for your own situation. So with that, I do want to extend a very, very big thank you to CEO Graham Knaus at CSAC, to CEO and President Sunny Wright McPeak at CETF. We're really appreciative of the work they're doing over there and the fact that we can be a part of it. And of course, I want to thank the presenters. Thank you so much, Sarah, Hillary, and Amir. I'm going to send out an email to everyone on the call and also bump this and other CSAC avenues to make sure that CETF resources, including outreach templates, various documents that can help you brainstorm, we're going to link you to those to make sure you have a starting point if you need a way of brainstorming, asking questions about your own county. So with that, I'll wish everyone a great afternoon and really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.